So, hi friends, a very good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining in on this special spaces of JST Investments, where we are going to talk about books. There are just some quotes on reading, right? So, a quote by George R. R. Martin goes like this: "A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one." And another one by Mark Twain says, "A person who can read books but doesn't has no advantage over the person who can't read them." I'm Aditya Kondawa, CEO of JST Investments, and I love reading books. Today, I have with me some of my friends who do some phenomenal work here on Twitter and outside, and who share with me the same interest in reading books. It gives me great pleasure to introduce them. First up, we have Nitin Dharmawat sir. He is the co-founder of Aurum Capital. He's an expert in finding compounders and also filtering out bad companies. In fact, he and his partner have done some amazing forensic work to dig these companies out and expose them to the markets. Nitin sir, I thank you for your selfless service. Next, we have Kumar Saurabh. Thank you. Next, we have Kumar Saurabh, whom we shall call Surubhai. Surubhai does amazing work in the field of techno fund investing. You should all go over to his YouTube channel right away after the spaces to see the kind of effort and time that he puts into his videos. So, thank you, Surubhai, for all of your service and for your videos. And then I have my friend, business partner, workout and eating partner, Anish Munka. He's the head of research of JST Investments. We have had endless conversations about books, movies, etc. And I have always come back, learning something more from him. In the end, I just want to talk about myself. I describe myself as a student of markets and someone who has been always curious, and that naturally led me to books, and of course other forms of content as well. So I love reading books that are not necessarily from the finance field. I have read about philosophy, art. I have read biographies. I have read about defense. I have read about mythology, history, etc., etc. Now, coming to the format of the session, it will be something like this. Each speaker will talk about their one favorite book to start with, and then in round two, we will again ask them about their second favorite book. For now, we have four speakers, and some of our Twitter friends have agreed to join in at the end as well. So we will try to accommodate them, and in Q&A as well, we'll try to take some questions, and if we have some time, we will take some speaker requests and as well, and we can ask them to share their one favorite book. With that, over to you, Nitin sir. We met in Pune recently, and we had a 9 kilometer walk. Yes, 9 kilometer walk. And the only thing that we spoke in those 2.5 hours is just books. So it was one of the best conversations that I have had over on books. So, sir, I would request you to share your top favorite book.
Thank you, Aditya, for kind introduction. You can call me Nitin. No need to call me Nitin, sir. Uh, uh, so, as far as the books are concerned, uh, there are multiple books. Actually, it's very difficult to name one. Uh, I started my investment journey with a book, Intelligent Investor, that I read sometime in 2001, 2002, when I seriously started, you know, my journey in terms of learning something concrete to understand the financial market. The book that I would like to quote as the first book is one that I read very recently, and I felt that this is one of the best books I read. Not only it's covering the financial world, but many aspects of the life. The name of the book is "All I Want to Know Is Where I'm Going to Die." So I will never go there. It's written by Peter Bevlin, an amazing book, and I'll talk more about it during the session.
Sure, Nitin sir, you can describe the book. Yeah, we are going in that format wherein you can just name your book and then you can describe it. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so this book is about a fictitious seeker, one who's a very normal person, uh, and who has who has gone through a lot of misery, and his visit to the library of wisdom. So he is entering into a library of wisdom, where he meets another fictitious character, the librarian. And librarian is very knowledgeable, and along with the librarian, he also gets an opportunity to meet two more persons. They are the best investors in the world, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. The seeker learns how to make better decisions to help his children avoid doing the dumb things he has done. For instance, he learns from Buffett and Munger The best way to prevent trouble is to avoid it altogether by learning what works and what does not. They do so in the spirit of anonymous men who said, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. Additionally, the book provides examples of fewer mistakes and some lessons on how to make fewer mistakes than other people, and then how to fix mistakes faster should you make them. The major lesson is ignorance removal and the notion that decision making is not about making brilliant decisions but avoiding terrible ones. That's very, very critical part. That is in short about the book, and I would like to quote a few of few of the lines from this book, which I really liked it. I have actually scribbled this entire book from first page to last page. So I am quoting it a couple of lines from page 169. It's about decision making. So here the seeker is asking about the decision making, and Munger says not only decision making but about evaluating, analyzing, and how Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger analyze the things and what is their thought process. So somebody like Warren Buffett, Munger is saying, somebody like Warren or myself can't enter an automobile agency without thinking, is this a good business or a bad business? If it is a bad business, why it is a bad business? If it is a good business, why it is a good business? Then Buffett says, Charlie is ungodly smart about business and human behavior. He deserves a lot. Then Charlie says, I have a habit in life. I observe what works and what doesn't, and why. I do it automatically. If you have that temperament, you will gradually learn. If you don't, I can't help you. Uh, then uh, uh, then there are few more quotes about it, and then finally Warren Buffett says, if I drive by McDonald's stand or a KFC stand, I will automatically think to myself, what is this business worth? How many customers do walk in the door? What kind of gross margins can they have? How many people do they need? How likely it is that another chicken stand opens across the street? All of those things. That's true of the chicken stand, and that is true of Google, or you name the business. It is all about evaluating the economic potential, the economic future of a given business. So their entire thinking is, analyzing in all the situation wherever they are going. So this is about the investment part, and there is another one where he talks about, leave about your means. So here Charlie says there once was a man who became the most famous composer in the world, and here they are giving the example of Mozart. But he was utterly miserable most of the time, and one of the reasons was that he always overspent his income. That was Mozart. If Mozart couldn't get by with this kind of S9 conduct, I don't think you should try. Then Seeker is asking, I believe it was Victor Borge who said that Mozart, he was happily married, but his wife wasn't. Then Warren Buffett is adding, Charlie and I have always been big fans of living within your income, and if you do that, you will have a whole lot more income later on. So a lot of lessons, given in this book, right from the way you conduct yourself in your life, and it's not about investment. It covers variety of aspects of our life. One of the best books that I read, undoubtedly.
Thank you, Nitin sir. I still remember, you suggested this book to me as well, and the one thing that really caught my attention was the title and the way it has been written. So thanks a lot for sharing your insights on the book. Suru bhai, our team sees a lot of your YouTube videos, and we couldn't help but notice the amazing bookshelf in your videos. So tell us about your number one book that you love and would recommend reading. You would recommend our listeners to read. Yeah.
Sure, Aditya. So, like the first love is always special, and the same way, the first book which really helped to shape up your investing journey, that book remains always special. And for me, that book has been The 5 Rules of Successful Investing by Mr. Pat Dorsey. What I liked about this book is, so when we think of investing, there are multiple things which we need to take care of. And this might be a primary book for somebody who is new to the market and somebody who is there in the market from a long time. He may not derive much value. So, if somebody who is new to the market, surely I will, recommend to have a look at the book. And when we look at investing, there are different dimensions. There are dimensions related to the business analysis, related to the financial analysis, related to how to analyze management, related to how to analyze valuation, related to how to analyze fraud. And to cover all of that in 300 pages with very simple, easy to understand English, I think the author has done a commendable job. But I believe what differentiates this book from a lot of other books is, if we see most of the books, they cover information on investing, management, finance, but the practical application of how to apply that knowledge in a given sector. And then, given we have so many sectors in the market, like we have some 20 plus sectors, and we have some 50, 60, 70 industries, and each sector in terms of its business economics, in terms of its financials, is different and unique. So the book has one half where it is more like theory, so it's like your typical school or college curriculum, where on one side you have theory and on the other side you have practical. So this book also, what he spoke in terms of analyzing management, analyzing moat, analyzing businesses, analyzing financials, valuation, all that is one first half of the book, which covers the theory part. And the second half of the book, if I remember, it has 14 chapters dedicated for 14 different sectors. So for each sector, you have a primer. So you can go through those chapter and you can build your own mental understanding, at least a starting understanding of that sector. And I still remember, like, the chapter which is there on financials. And again, in financials, they have tried to subsegment it in terms of how a bank is different from an AMC, and how you should think of AMC businesses. Like, I can see there is a lot of excitement about brokerage companies, but the book highlights, so some of the same old learnings get repeated again and again, that how brokerage industries, they do really well at peak of the bull cycle, how they suffer in the bear cycle, and how to approach them, how to time them, and a lot of things. So the top sectors like IT, in terms of software company versus product companies, what to look in product companies, how to look at pharma companies. So I think it's a treasure of knowledge, where 14 different sector knowledge, how to approach that, has been combined together in one book along with theory. And that is the reason why I like that book. And that book is very application based. I believe you can go through it and you can try to apply it in your day-to-day investing. And it was a nice book, and I love to read that book again and again. I think in last 6 years I have read some 3 times. And many times we forget things, and only when we revisit we realize that, okay, this was there, and I missed this point, or maybe in the bull market I have forgotten this point. So yeah, it remains one of the go-to books for me to start, and even today.
Thank you, Surubhai. And like you rightly said, in a bull run, it's more important to go back to basics and just brush up on it so that you don't make any mistakes, right? Over to you, Anish. I have already said a lot of kind words for you, so no more kind words for you. I'm just kidding. But one interest that we share, Anish, is that we read a lot of diverse books. So, what is the number one book that you love and would recommend? Yeah.
So, firstly, AK, thank you, Nitin sir and Surubhai, for doing this space. We learn every day from your tweets and deeply grateful for your association with us. Additionally, now I look forward to read both of the recommendations from giants like Peter Bevlin and Pat Dorsey. So, coming on to the topic of the day, as they say, one book can change your life. I would have two books to share, which have done mine. So, where one is on the topic of business failures, which I believe is as much talked about as much as selling is talked about in stock markets, which is rare. But in real life, there is much more to learn from our failures than the ego boosting successes. And the other is on how to live longer. So, what to do and what not to do, researched thoroughly and written by someone who is at the forefront of his research. So, on the business failures one, the book is The $1 billion Lessons, what you can learn from the most inexcusable business failures of the last 25 years by Paul D. Corol and Chunka Mui. I have seen very few investors ever talk about this outstanding book. So, to delve deeper, in the 1960s, IBM CEO Tom Watson called an executive into his office after his venture lost $10 million, a big deal at that point in time, obviously. So, Watson, who was known to have a very high temper, asked the man if he knew why he was called in. The man said he assumed that he was being fired. Very logical. So, Watson told him, fired? Hell, I spent $10 million educating you. I just want to be sure you learned the right lessons. So there are thousands of books about successful companies, but virtually none about the lessons to be learned from those that crash and burn. So if we look into history, we will find numerous examples burning not just millions, but billions of dollars on mistakes that seem avoidable. So it is much more valid today than ever, due to we can see that the average lifespan of a company continues to inch down as we speak. So it's much more important to know from where will the disruption come, whether be it externally or internally. So this book will help you all with that. So I was doing some research on similar lines. So since 1981, approximately 500 US companies with assets of more than $500 million, assets not valuation, $500 million, which is basically 4,000 crores, filed for bankruptcy. Their combined assets at the time of their bankruptcy filings total more than $2 trillion. Their combined annual revenue was $1 trillion. Yeah, and it just makes sense to me. So learning not to fail is the key to success, because success is just so varied, while failure is quite predictable. To give you a sense, I'll take an example of stock markets. For example, if I avoid the places where I will die, as Nitin sir mentioned, like FNO, over leveraging, chore promoters, catching a falling knife, buying fads in momentum, letting my ego get the better of me by not cutting my losses, by which I mean where my thesis failed to materialize, etc., etc. Over the long run, the probability of me blowing up becomes negligible. And that's the target. However, when it comes to success, I can YOLO all my money into one penny stock, and that becomes a 100x multi-bagger. And as no one cares about the risk that I took to get this outcome, I would be termed as the best investor the world has ever seen. The next Warren Buffett then would be called on every media house out there and would gain the ability to move the markets with a simple tweet. So that's why studying success is a tricky thing. We all know of someone who's a heavy drinker and a chain smoker who lived till 90 without cancer. Repeating again, success is a tricky thing. Failure is much more predictable. Just a quote from the book, we found that failures often don't stem from lack of execution, nor are they due to timing or luck. What we found instead is that many of the really big failures stemmed from bad strategies. For example, if you read the Hero Electric 2010 articles about Hero Electric, then you will find that they were as much bullish about electric vehicles back then as they are today, but they didn't see the growth that they were planning to see. And currently it might play out, it might not play out, whatever the world works way. But at that point in time, it was a really bad strategy, and it can be said in hindsight. Once launched, the strategies were doomed to fail. So, and then this book talks about all the common strategies across history that have almost regularly failed. So some of them being like mergers and acquisitions in hopes of synergy, where it is seen that 2/3 or more takeovers reduce the value of a company, when research was done across thousands of M&As. Due diligence is a mere joke at most times. The promoters that are selling out usually dress up the company to hide the bad features. A common theme in IPOs. However, every entrepreneur who buys the company still believes that this time will be different. It's usually not. So we will go deeper in. We will not go deeper into others. However, they are basically taking a shortcut through financial engineering, staying the course, even if they know that it is a dead end. Getting into agencies, for example, a pharmaceutical drugs company which enters into hospitals and diagnostics business, where the history shows that the probability of success is in lower single digits when a company goes into agencies, and many more other strategies. So while these strategies are not guaranteed failures, they are what the authors say danger zones. So if your company is pursuing one of these strategies, you need to be extremely alert to what could go wrong and be ready to react before your business starts starts flirting with tragedy. So it's a must read for all investors, executives, and entrepreneurs. At least spend a week reading this one. I'll just end it with a quote, like business isn't about finding the exact right answer, but rather is about avoiding the wrong answers and then executing as hard and as well as possible the answers that might be right. Now I'll pass on the mic to AK, who will talk about his first book.
Thank you, Anish. I think that was a very interesting book, and I think it's something similar to Nitin sir's book, wherein he says that don't go to all the places where you have a risk. So yeah, I think a beautiful book. We have all of these books on success, so it's also important to know about failure so that you don't so you avoid these mistakes or don't get into those kind of companies. So coming to my book, so I have divided it into two parts, wherein I have a finance book and I have a non-finance book. So my first book is a finance one. I would strongly recommend. So the book has 12 chapters. Chapters such as say contrarian investing, growth traps, value investing, investing in PSUs, IPOs, commodity investing, etc., etc. So my three favorite chapters from the book are, of course, number one are IPOs, of course. Number two is contrarian investing, and number three is in understanding behavioral trends. So I'm just going to touch upon a bit upon all of these three chapters a bit. So when it comes to
you have hacked my notes, Aditya. Not only the book, in that order actually.
Oh damn! Oh wow! I feel really lucky that we have similar thoughts. And sorry, Nitin sir, I stole your book and notes. So coming to IPOs, the late Parisar says that whenever it comes to something new, right, we are always excited by it. Be it a new growth industry, be it a new technology company, or even a new company coming to the markets, which is an IPO. So of course, a lot of investors have made huge gains through IPOs, but of course, there are empirical evidence suggests that winners are very few and are far. Losers outnumber them by a very huge margin. So we all know that in the mid 1990s we have had a huge IPO bull run. A lot of these companies came hundreds of IPOs in a single day. This that. The book beautifully depicts how many IPOs came, how many of them are still existing, how many of them are still at issue price, above issue price, and how many of them have beaten the index return. So it's a beautiful study. Then coming to the chapter on contrarian investing, right? So I believe contrarian investing is something which is widely misunderstood by everyone. Common market parlance says that contrarian investing is all about going against the market, right? But let's just listen to what other famous investors or other famous businessmen have to say about that. So if everybody else is doing it one way, there's a good chance you can find your niche by going in exactly the opposite direction. But be prepared for a lot of folks to wave you down and tell you why you are headed the wrong way. So this is a quote by Sam Walton. Of course, we all know how at what scale Walmart exists at today. Then a contrarian investor can be defined as someone who attempts to profit by betting against conventional wisdom, but only when the consensual opinion appears to be wrong. So this line is very important. The crowd has to be wrong as well. It's not as if the crowd will be always wrong, or just because the crowd is taking one position you have to take the opposite position to win, because sometimes the crowd is right as well. So at the heart of the argument of betting against the crowd is the belief that markets are more often than not efficient, right? So to understand this anomaly, you think of the stock market as an aggregator, where people of diverse opinions, expectations, incentives, they bet against each other, leading to more or less efficient markets. But sometimes, of course, like I said, this diversity amongst these participants breaks down due to factors like, say, excessive fear or greed, leading to majority of the market acting as one and in the wrong direction. Now, lastly, the book has a beautiful study on behavioral trends. The market is made of humans after all. We all have our own biases. We all have our own, say, expectations. We all are human after all. We have our emotions attached. So, late Parag Parikh really says that, you look at the whole market as a single organism and as a single individual with its own biases. And again, building up on the previous point, in times of greed and fear, the market may give you a lot of mispriced bets. These are bets which are quite obvious and the market is not seeing it for a very long period of time. So let me summarize the book very quickly. From an Indian stock market perspective, it's an amazing book. One more thing that I really love about the book is that it has been written in a very simple language, very layman language. It can be your first book when you enter the markets. The concepts are beautifully explained with data.
Aditya, you have one more fan here of the same book. So there is one more point I would like to add.
Sure,
If
please.
you are
Survive.
looking for one book in Indian context which is totally data driven, I think this is the book. And because I do a lot of data experiments, I mean, Aditya, you'll know, you go chapter by chapter, whether it is IPO or any chapter, you will have 20 years of data. How did it happen? And all the insights are driven by those data analysis. So anybody who is focused on data driven insights for Indian context, you have to read this book.
Thank you, Surubhai. See, guys, if it is coming from Surubhai, it has to be 100% true because he is someone who plays around with a lot of data. He does a lot of techno fund analysis. Thanks for adding Surubhai, and that's about it. That is why I love this book because it beautifully summarizes all the aspects of the market in a very simple language. Everything is backed by data, and that is why I would recommend Value Investing and Behavioral Finance by the late Parag Parikh sir. And with that, again, I'll hand it back over to Nitin sir, who can now talk about his second book, which I just told.
No issues, Aditya. And I'm very happy that there is a common book amongst all of us.
Yeah.
And I can still add some more points. See, I'll say a couple of things over here. Why I like this book. First is that this is the first book from Indian context. A lot of Indian examples are there. Actually, everything is Indian example, and you won't find an equivalent book available in our market which is covering our market, because we have our own uniqueness in many aspects. There are some concepts which are of course applicable globally, but there are certain things, certain case studies which may be applicable from Indian market, and we may be able to relate it better if we have that. So this is the book which provides that. Second point is Parag Parikh sir was the first person who started talking about behavioral aspects of investing. He was the first person in Indian market who started talking about it. There was no one in late 90s and early 2000 who was talking about behavioral finance, and he started focusing on that. It would not be exaggeration if I say that it is equivalent to the Intelligent Investor for Indian market. It is such a nice book, very simple to understand, very simple language, 12 chapters, lot of data, all case studies, beautifully explained, covering all the aspects of the market. I'll quote certain things from the book. You talked about IPO. Actually, that was the first thing I also wanted to talk about, because you see a lot of platform companies getting listed right now. So here he gives the example on page number 197. And this book has come in 2009, almost 13 years ago. Yeah, this was his second book. I read his first book also, and this is the second book. And I think in 2012, I asked him that, "Are you writing third book?" He said that I'm working on it. Unfortunately, he is no more with us, and we could not get the third book. I asked Neil also about the book. He said that it's not in their plans right now, but he may consider it because he was writing that third book as well. So here in IPO section, page number 197, what he says, he talks about Infosys as an example. Only one company, Infosys, has immensely rewarded its shareholders. However, it did not come with an IPO. In the technology bull market, it came much before that in 1992. Many people may not, most of us may be aware about this fact, but they may not be aware about this part, that its issue had a tough time getting subscribed. It came with an IPO with a genuine need to finance its expansion and growth. There was no intention to capitalize on the market boom, as none existed then. The intention being noble, the management has amply rewarded the shareholder with consistent growth in profit and earning. It has done exceedingly well, and is at present the market leader. During the technology boom, when everyone was buying technology stocks or IPOs, they were thinking that they were buying the next Infosys, which never happens. One. Second is, if you are going in technology boom and many IPOs are coming, and if you are subscribing to them, most of this will come at at an exorbitantly high valuation. So even if they are doing well, some of these companies which were getting listed during the IPO boom period of 2000, they may not be worth in terms of returns to the shareholders. And that something similar we have witnessed very recently when the platform companies started, listing. They might have seen immediate gains, but if you look at after some period, most of these companies have seen significant drawdowns, and I'm not too sure if they will be able to recover and will touch the same price. And that is the risk we see the IPO period. And he was actually not in favor of subscribing to IPOs. So that's one point I wanted to highlight from IPO. The first chapter, there are 12 chapters as I mentioned. The first chapter is about success and failure, and he gives the explanation using human nature of laziness, greed, self-interest, ignorance, etc. Are the reasons for the why people fail. And one of the main reasons for the failure of people that he explained is unwillingness to delay gratification. Delayed gratification is a very, very important point, and he stressed in this book very significantly. Instant gratification causes the vast majority of people to indulge themselves in short-term gains or long-term pain. So beautiful book. I highly recommend this with a lot of Indian examples. Over to you, Aditya.
AK, you are on mute.
The intelligent investor version of India. So definitely agree with that. And just a fun fact on the Infosys IPO, Morgan Stanley had to subscribe to the 13% of the issue. Just imagine if they had held on to this stake till today. As they say, the rest is history. So yeah, definitely. Even I'm happy that we shared the same book, and of course, like Surubhai also had the same book. So over to you, Surubhai. What is the number 2 book that you would like to recommend?
So the number 2 book is interesting one, and as Indians we like offer, हमें एक पे एक free चाहिए. So though I'm not telling one book free on one, but I will tell one book where we can apply in 2 different areas. So in life for us it is all about investing and job. So this book, if you want, you can apply in investing, and if you want, you can look for a job, and still you can take the learnings for your job interviews. And it's very interesting. So some of the jobs which I did were consulting related jobs, and I had to prepare for those consulting interviews. And the kind of questions were asked were like, let me give example of one question. So in one interview, I was asked, right now it is 3:30 p.m. You're in Bangalore. Tell me how many aeroplanes are flying in the air. So these kind of vague question, which if you look in consulting, what this is known as guesstimates. So basically, how do you approach guesstimates? There is a very structured approach, and there is a way in which they want the answer. And they look at your thought process, your ability to make the right assumptions, and then from nowhere you have to come out with a data-driven answer, with a logical thinking approach, with a structured thinking, with right and logical assumptions, and then to answer the question. And this is what consultants do. But I feel this is what we investors also do. And many times when you hear about companies of huge market size, opportunity and all, we have to build those future projections. We have to build those guesstimates. Everybody is working on their Excel, but the accuracy of anybody's model will depend on his assumptions, and how accurate are those assumptions will depend, how reasonable and how logical you have been building those estimates. Like I remember 5-6 years back when I was trying to do a valuation for Eicher Motors. One question was, what is the projected sales growth for the bikes? And again, it will start with, you take the Indian population, you divide, then you look by age band, how many people are in that age band who will buy, then who are in that affordable income, who can afford that kind of income. And you keep filtering out, and then you will get a very, very small subset which will look like, okay, this is the probable candidate, and if this is the probable candidate, they can get 10%. So you're doing a guesstimate exercise. You don't need to be exactly right, but if you are in plus minus 20% and you pick the right valuation, you are good. So whether you are applying for any kind of this kind of consulting jobs, or you are investing where you're doing these kind of valuation exercise, I think there is a lot of things which are common, and that is where this book comes. So the name of the book is Case in Point, and it is written by Mark Patrick Cosentino. What the book contains a lot of use cases. Like you will have use cases related to banking, like if in banking the CEO has to take a call, and how he should approach about customer cross sell or upsell. So it takes lot of industry use cases where you have to apply lot of guesstimates, and then the book helps you to mentally prepare how you should do these guesstimate exercise in a very very structured approach, how you can take the right data points from economic data or population data or this different kind of data, industry data, and how you can come with a reasonable number which may not be accurate but will be close, and that is how the decisions are taken for the future. So I find this book very relevant whenever I prepare for these kind of consultative interviews, or even in the market when I have to do valuation exercise for some specific companies which are not in that matured phase where the valuation, the growth rate is easily visible that they will grow at 8-9%. Those are the areas where I try to apply learnings from the book. So case in point is one book I would like to recommend as my second book.
Thank you, Surbhai. Over to you, Anish. What's your second book?
So my second choice for the night is a book called Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, by Dr. David Sinclair. So before I go deeper, I want to explain the term health span, which is a part of a person's life during which they are generally in good health, while lifespan is the age you die at. For example, in India, the lifespan is 70 years, while the health span is just 50. So increasing health span is something one ought to work on. Lifespan usually follows. So there's this movie called Dead Poets Society, and if you haven't really watched it, you should check it once you are done with this space. It's about life. So there's this hero of the film who is a professor who challenges his teenage students to stare into the faces of long dead boys in a fading photo. Into the faces of long dead boys in a fading photo. He says, they are not that different from you, are they? Invincible, just like you feel. Their eyes are full of hope. But you see, gentlemen, these boys are now fertilizing daffodils. Keating encourages the boys to lean in closer to listen for a message from the grave. Standing behind them in a quiet, ghostly voice, he whispers, Carpe, Carpe diem, seize the day, boys, make your lives extraordinary. Now, what if? What if you could extend your health span by 20 more years? What if you could increase it by 50 years? Imagine how much more extraordinary you can make your life. On similar lines, the author Mr. David Sinclair is incredibly passionate to enable people to live longer, healthier, and disease-free well into their hundreds. For decades, the medical community has looked to a variety of reasons for why we age, and the consensus is that no one dies of old age. They die of age-related diseases. That's because aging is not regarded as a disease. It is inevitable. But what if everything you know about aging is wrong? What if aging is a disease and that disease is curable? So this book basically covers the latest advances, including the lab research of the author from Harvard Business School in Boston and others in aging. So Dr. Sinclair starts by discussing our attitudes towards aging. Most people think of it as inevitable, as I discussed. As a result, while many serious diseases such as cancer, heart diseases, dementia, and others have received considerable funding, aging still continues to receive a small fraction of that. Also, grants awarded to aging are often used up for research into diseases more prevalent, typically in old age, such as dementia, rather than aging itself. The fact, though, is that aging leaves you more susceptible to many diseases and also invariably affects quality of life for many. So, the advances in medicine have improved the average age by greatly reducing early deaths and fighting diseases. However, humankind has so far not been able to raise the maximum age. Like very few make it past 100. So aging need not be considered inevitable, is what Dr. Sinclair wants to say, and should rightfully be declared a disease. There is now a reasonable good understanding of why we age. Research is reaching a point where this can be arrested in a few years. So even if medical intervention to significantly increase lifespan is years out, there is a lot we can do today. So there is evidence that intermittent fasting, where you eat only at a certain period in time in a single day, like for example, in an 8-hour period in a whole day, whether be it due to exercise such as yoga and some high intensity interval training that works, a careful diet plan, lots of veggies, nuts. His research says that to avoid meat, processed foods, dairy, and sugar, and some already available medication. The evidence, though, is not fully conclusive at this point in time. These are the things that can help us extend our lifespan a lot more. So he also cites his personal example and that of his father, who remains active well into his 80s. So I looked at some of his photos, and I've been following him since then, and he certainly looks like well younger than his age of 50 plus. So this is an excellent and a very readable book, which I will strongly recommend all to read. This book completely changed my perspective towards aging. I will just end it with a quote from the book, which might help you, which might motivate you to read more about it. So, would you subject your loved ones to a decade or two of unnecessary hardship, having to look after you physically, emotionally, and financially in your final years if you didn't have to? Spend a day in a nursing home like my wife does every few days. Go feed people who can't chew, wipe their bottoms, bathe them with a sponge, watch as they struggle to remember where they are and who they are. When you are done, I think you will agree that it will be negligent and cruel for you not to do what you can to combat your age related deterioration. Thank you, and I'll pass on to AK to speak about his last book.
So that was a very intense book, Anish, to be honest, and thanks for sharing about it in depth. So we have Vidya here, and she would like to touch upon her 2 books, and then after that, I will take it upon me to end it with my last book. Yeah, Vidya, over to you, and thanks for joining in.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Aditya. Thanks for having me over, and apologies for being so late. So, from what I've heard, it seems to be a really wonderful session, and I loved every bit of it. The books, the speakers, the way they express themselves, and I'd like to begin with a book, which I picked up during the lockdown, and this was something which was completely unexpected. Have you ever picked up a book without having any expectations whatsoever about it? And then as you begin reading the book, you realize that, you've hit jackpot. This book is something that needs to be savored because there's so much of wisdom in each sentence of it. So I came across such a book. The name of the book is A Book of Simple Living, which is written by Ruskin Bond. I keep tweeting about it a lot. Actually, I've even written a thread about it. But, this book is something which helped me look at life from a different perspective altogether. Because the book is enriched with life lessons. For me, the most profound one of them was life is simple. Despite all its hardships and all its complexities, life is simple. Because the purpose of life is to live. Now, how we choose to live is what makes our life simple or complicated. And to further elaborate on this, I'd just like to read the first page, which made me realize that this book is a goldmine. A small ginger cat arrives on my terrace every afternoon to curl up in the sun and slumber peacefully for a couple of hours. When he awakes, he gets on his feet with minimum effort, arches his back, and walks away just as he had come. The same spot every day, the same posture, the same pace. There may be better spots, sunnier, quieter, frequented by birds that can be hunted when the cat is rested and restored. But there is no guarantee. And the search will be never ending. And there may be rarely time to sleep after all that searching and finding. It occurs to me that perhaps the cat is a monk. By this, I don't mean anything austere. I doubt anyone in single-minded pursuit of enlightenment ever finds it. A good monk would be a mild sort of fellow, a bit of a sensualist, capable of compassion for the world, but also for himself. He would know that it is all right to not climb every mountain. A good monk would know that contentment is easier to attain than happiness, and that it is enough. This forms the very first page of that book. And to be very honest, I was just blown away by this. Because if you look at it from a broader perspective, there are so many aspects to it which can be applied to in investing, Like all of us tend to say that we have got an investment philosophy, say in quotes, but then we keep running against, for momentum stocks, or maybe for value investing, or maybe we just do trading or speculation or whatever. So we are completely different from this particular cat. There may be better spots, sunnier, quieter, frequented by birds. Same thing. There may be better aspects in value investing, or maybe in momentum on one particular day. But ultimately, there is no guarantee. And the search will be never ending. And we may tend to miss the bus in the pursuit of another bus. Ultimately, we'll just end up at the bus stop having caught no bus. And that's what got me thinking. And this book, the beauty of this book is it's just basically a compilation of Ruskin Bond's notes. That's his observations. What we draw from it, what we infer from it, is totally up to us. So if you pick up this book when you're happy, you might get a different inference from it. If you pick it up when you're sad, you might realize something else. If you pick it up in anger, you might just flip through the pages and just come across some extract which might, help you regain some composure. And I guess it's rare for a book to have these many aspects in it. And that's why this is one of my favorite books. So, Aditya, have you read this book?
No, Vijay, I haven't read it. To be honest, it's. The way you described it just makes me sad that I haven't read it yet. But yeah.
I think all of our users need to read this because, investing, yes, it's necessary to read about investing, but it's also necessary to read about so many other different aspects which will help us be a better investor, which will help us develop patience. And I guess this one book is that book which has helped me see things in a different light. So, yeah, that's about it.
Sure. And Vijay, what about your second book? Which one would you recommend?
पहले आप बोल दो यार, मैं अभी इतनी देर बाद की मुझे सांस लेने दो. I just need to think about it. Actually, there are many books.
No worries,
but,
no worries.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, Vijay, the second book that I'm going to talk about is a book that you had gifted to me. So it's called Tuesdays with Maury.
Okay.
And definitely.
That's a great book.
Yeah. So it's one of the most touching books that I've ever read in a very long time. So the book is a narration of two people, of a person who narrates the story about his weekly meetings with his professor. So the professor is called Maury Schwartz, and the professor had taught this student, which is Mitch Album, during his graduation days. But they lost touch, and after 15 years, finally they get in touch again. And the professor is in the last stages of his life. He's dying of cancer, and every Tuesday, so somehow the stars align, and somehow Mitch starts meeting his professor every Tuesday. And every Tuesday when he meets his professor, they talk about something, and so one thing leads to another, and it becomes a continuous affair between the two. And so it's a very beautiful conversation that they have every Tuesday about aging, about death, about money, about emotions. What are the lessons that change their lives? With each issue discussed, right, you feel a sort of connection with Mitch's situation. That our lives have become so fast. We tend to ignore or forget the things that really matter. And that's about it. The book, to give you a summary, it is a book about dying man's last words. It will take you on an emotional roller coaster of sorts, right? So some of my quotes from the book, right? So love is how you stay alive even after you're gone. Don't cling to things because everything is impermanent. So a few more quotes. Life is a series of pullbacks and forth, tension of opposites, like a pull on a rubber band. Most of us live somewhere in the middle, a wrestling match with side wins. Love wins, love always wins. This is part of what a family is about, not just love. It's knowing that your family will be there watching out for you. Nothing else will give you that, not money, not fame, not work. And yeah, to conclude, it's a very light read and a short book. I believe I finished it over a weekend. And yeah, a lot. I would strongly recommend this book to everyone. I think everyone will love it. So yeah, that's about it. Over to you, Vijay.
Okay, so before I begin the second book, I just wanted to say that I heard a little bit of what everyone else spoke. And I agree with Nitinji. I too am a big Parag Parikh fan. And Sir's books have been path-changing for me. My thought process is completely evolved because of reading Parag Parikh Sir's books, late Parag Parikh Sir's books. And I strongly believe that every single one of us have to read that, because behavioral aspect is completely ignored, and it's underrated by most of us long-term investors. And I guess that's the key. That's the jackpot which we all need to work upon.
Vidya, you joined little late. I think that book is not only my favorite, but Aditya and Kumar also talked about it.
So then I'm glad to be a part of the group, sir. I mean, all of us have at least one common favorite.
Unanimously favorite book वही रही है ये session की.
Good to have a consensus.
So that was the second book, VG?
No. The second book, since that book has already been mentioned, I'd like to again go away from the investing path and recommend a book which I think every youngster particularly needs to read today because of the advent of social media. The Courage to be Disliked. I know Variko keeps recommending it, and it is worthy of a read. If you remember, Aditya, I'd given you the book as well.
Absolutely, I have read it too. Yeah, so definitely it's a good one.
So because the thing is, what happens in today's social media, we live for validation. We seek validation. So whatever we do, we need validation. नहीं तो basically हमारा खुद का कुछ अस्तित्व नहीं है. It's like, nahi, अरे मुझे इतना likes नहीं मिला, अरे मुतना. I too am a victim of this. I'm not blaming anybody. I too sometimes get very angry when इतने अच्छे से लिखा, but views नहीं मिले and all that. We seek validation. You put up a photo, you want these many minimum number of likes, or you feel अरे इसने इतना फालतू लिखा है, फिर भी उसको मिला है. We need the courage to be disliked. So that's why I strongly recommend this book, because snippets of it may sound patronizing at times, but then there's a lot to think about. There is a lot to think, reflect, and observe. Because, from my perspective, like, have you ever observed the world sometimes seems so beautiful and people seem helpful, but then ek din kisi ne help karne ke liye mana kar diya, and suddenly you feel, oh, the world is so mean and selfish. So is the world actually changing, or is our subjective world changing because of the change in our projections? I think it's the latter that's at work. And the book speaks extensively about it. And, another very touchy aspect, I mean, quite a few people might disagree with me, but then people keep saying that we have faced trauma as a child and that's why we have become a bad person. Yes, I mean, things happen, shitty things happen to even good people. But then ultimately, beyond the point, we determine our lives as per our meaning, as per the meaning we give those past experiences. You can either get better or you can get bitter. It's your choice after a point. We can decide how we want to live. But have we ever sat down and given it some thought, whether you want to take those past experiences and learn from them and evolve, or you want to constantly keep blaming, "Arey, isne mere saath aisa kiya tha, isne mere saath waisa kiya tha, that's why I didn't succeed in life." It doesn't work that way. So, this book makes you think on that aspect as well. And basically, everything we possess is a tool. Our brain is a tool. Our emotions are a tool. They can all be used effectively or in a detrimental manner. But then again, what is effective and what is detrimental? And isn't it all subjective? So this book touches on that aspect as well. It's not for light reading. This book requires a lot of thought. But this book, if read correctly and, if reflected upon, can change your life. Because we all go through some or the other form of pain in life. And ironically, the most secure person is one who has been through a lot in life. Somebody who's got everything handed out on a platter is the most insecure person. They might project themselves as, being secure, but that isn't the case in reality. And the most important chapter in this book, how many of us actually love ourselves the way we are? Social media has, made it that way. We put our photos with tens of thousands of filters, or we only talk about our gains in investing. We don't talk about our mistakes, our losses. We only tend to show our good aspects. We want to be loved. We want to be appreciated. We don't want to show our imperfections to society. Why is that so? I mean, we all are human. We all make mistakes. Why can't we laugh at our own mistakes instead of laughing at each other? So this book made me think a lot on that aspect, because nobody is stopping us from becoming the person we wish to be. Ultimately, it's just us. We are building a realm of possibilities and shackling ourselves to one particular aspect. Ye nahi, mujhse nahi ho sakta hai ye. Inhone aisa kiya, inhone waisa kiya. No, that's not the case. And ultimately, I'd like to end with a beautiful quote from this book. We do not lack ability. We just lack the courage. It all ultimately comes down to courage. And this is something which I think each one of us need to think about a lot in private. It's all comes down to courage. That's about it from my
Sure,
end.
Vijay. Thanks a lot. I think you touched upon two really interesting books. With that, folks, I think our session also comes to an end. I would really like to thank Nitin sir, Suru bhai, Vidya, Anish for coming here and talking about their favorite books. I think we all spoke about a diverse set of books. So a lot of people have already DM'd me to put out the books that we have mentioned on the spaces today. We'll do that shortly. Thanks a lot for joining in. Have a great weekend and good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.